Hi, Sunny from Sonlight here, and joining me today is Rhonda from our product development team. Hi, Rhonda. Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
And
Sunny.
we are going to tell you all about the updates that are coming to Sonlight in 2023. So as a longtime Sonlight mom myself, I'm always excited to see what's coming each year. And we have quite a few updates this year that we're going to talk about. So we'll add time markers to the video so people can kind of skip around, but we're going to be talking about changes to levels K and A, several of our Bible programs, a high school history program, poetry, and science. So we have a lot to jump into. But Rhonda, let's start by talking about K and A. What are we doing there? This has definitely been led by customer feedback. So how are we going to make these programs better?
So this has definitely been customer led. We've heard a lot of feedback from customers who have used our new kindergarten program and our new A program that we had before. But when they encountered the kindergarten program, they felt the topics were a little too advanced, or while their kids were still learning how to have that great attention span, they thought it was a little too advanced. So what we've done with K and A is we've decided to change which history program is studied first. So we're moving all of the history content from A and we're putting it in K. And then we're moving the history content from K and putting it in A. We hope this will balance out the difficulty level of things, but it also does something that's really important. We want our kids to have a great worldview, an understanding of the world. And so this will allow our kindergartners, people who use Sonlight for the first time, to experience the whole entire world and get that great worldview first. And then they'll be able to study American history, which, if they're following the same progression as our Sonlight levels, they'll study American history then in their first grade year about, and then not again until they reach levels D and E. And so that spaces out our world history experience from B and C, and then spaces out our American history as well.
So in the new program, if I'm understanding this correctly, the name K is now going to become that world cultures program, correct? And then the name A is American history.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so somebody's looking on our website or in the catalog and they're like, wait, I want K, which level is that? K is now going to be world cultures, right?
Correct, yes, it is. Along with the history moving, we're moving the Bible as well. We wanted students to study the Eggermeyer's Bible, the storybook first, and then Bible in 1 year book after that. And so we're swapping the Bible as well. What is not changing is the read alouds for those levels. Those seem to be really appropriate for each of the levels we had them in. So we're keeping those where they are. So this changes the configuration of what is in the History Bible Literature package. So that will change how you're ordering things as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. If somebody ordered K in 2022 and now they would normally move on to A, but now, of course, the history they already did in level K, they already own and probably did this year. How are they going to be able to order versus somebody who's brand new in 2023 and just ordering the K HBL or the full ASP for level K?
Right. So if you used the kindergarten level this year and you want to purchase the next level next year, we will keep those same packages available to you. You can still purchase them. What is in 2022, it will have a label that says 2022 on it, and that is the level that you'll want to buy. So you can buy a level A from the 2022 version, and that will have the right configuration for you. That will have the right books for you to then study the world cultures, because you studied American history first. And so you'll study the world cultures in A. That will be available to you. And similarly, if you followed some advice of doing A before K and you want to go backwards, we're going to keep that K, the 2022 K package as well, so that you can then go back and study American history.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so there's an option for everyone depending on what they've done, and we're not adding or changing any books, right? Like somebody's not going to miss out if they're doing the 2022 package, because we're not actually changing or adding any new books at this point that they're missing out on.
Correct. Yes, you'll not miss out on anything. And when you order new this year, if you're new to Sonlight and you order K and A, those will still all be complete and the exact package that you'll want to have.
Perfect. Yeah. So this might be a good opportunity when somebody is ordering these. Should they talk to an advisor or use the check cart option, maybe where an advisor goes back and checks the cart in case they have any concerns? I know whenever there's a change in my mind, I'm like, oh, did I do this right? You know, what are options there to make sure that we at Sonlight are looking at it and that people are going to end up with the right package?
Right. Asking an advisor is always a great option. They're very knowledgeable about what you've purchased and then where you'll need to go. Just the next step for you. Having somebody check your cart is always an added feature that you can take advantage of at any time. And so there's plenty of helps available to you as well. Just reach out and let us know what questions you have. We don't want you to order the wrong thing. We want you to get the next great package as well. Yep. They're both great programs and just so delightful. And so I'm excited for customers to continue to use them and for them to be able to have the right things for their kids at the right time. So I'm very excited about the change. I think it will be great for years to come.
Let's talk about Bible now. You know, from time to time, you'll see over the years maybe a new book being added or small changes here and there. But in 2023, several of our Bible programs are getting an update. So can you explain why we decided to do that this year?
Yeah, it was time to look at our Bible program. Oftentimes we have a history program we want to revamp or our readers or something like that. And it was time to look at our Bible books and just reevaluate each one. We went through each one and said, is this still appropriate? Is this still the best of the best? Is this what we want our kids to see? The other thing that we evaluated is we feel like, with culture shifting or just how the world is now, we wanted kids to be more prepared to know their faith and defend it and to be able to speak eloquently with others about it. Speak respectfully and honestly about their faith. And so we have added quite a few books that are in the apologetics category where we're talking about what people believe and why they believe it. And so this will give our students, your kids, time to explore those concepts while they're at home with you. And we really want them to know their faith and to be able to explain it to others.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have any of those books here with us? Any of the new ones? I know you've got a stack there. So yeah,
I've got a couple stacks. This one is called The Radical Book for Kids. It's very well illustrated and kind of more bite-sized pieces. We wanted to pick books that were pleasing to students so that they would want to read them. This goes on just different topics. This is What Do You Do When You're Afraid? Women Who Gave Their Lives for Christ. That talks about Lottie Moo. And I know a lot of missionaries that we talk about. Latin words you should know. It's very nice to look at. I know my son flipped through it when I showed it to him and was like, oh yeah, I'm interested in this. And he read a little bit more. There's just different pieces of that. That one is going into our level F program. I know that'll be really good. These are two books that we're adding to C and D. These are two books about talking to your kids about Jesus and about God. These are actually written to parents so that they have ideas of what conversations to have with their kids. We found it was so readable, it was so approachable that you can read this directly to your kid and read with them. And that way they hear those explanations. But this is bringing up, what things do we believe and how does that differ from other people? And how do we talk about it and what are the reasons why? And I think a lot of times, we talk to our kids and we want them to have the right answer, but with faith, that's something different. You really want them to own it and have it be their own and for them to have it in their heart. And so it's not just having the right answer, but it's understanding it and being able to speak eloquently about it. So I think just the conversational tone of these books is just so great. And that will really spark a lot of conversations, I think, with your kids. This book is one we're adding to G, I think. It's a little guide on how to pray, which I found really interesting. It's little short snippets, but it talks about how you can incorporate prayer into your everyday activities. It doesn't have to be your quiet time in the morning where you spend an hour journaling and going through everything. It can be during the day. It can be in your quiet moments that you have. It can be when you're in trouble, when you need help, those kinds of things. But just reminding you that you can pray all the time. You can have this constant dialogue with God. So this is a really good introduction to that. We do have another one about keeping your kids on God's side, also talking about how how to build a lasting faith. And that's also one that's written to the parents, but really good to read together. So we think that will be really nice. There's this really well-known book, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. This one just gives you a general how to incorporate God into your life and how to have it be a theme throughout to give you purpose in the world. So that's a well-known one, and I think people will really enjoy reading that. In the earlier years, we have a case for kids. So a case for Christ, a case for the Creator. We have a condensed version that's for kids, and we're adding in those adult versions later on, the full versions of them. So we have both of those that are going into the high school programs. Really, again, just to flesh out why we believe and what we believe in. So those are going to be really good. And then a large apologetics book, a really good apologetics course, not large, it's skinny. What do you need to know about defending your faith? I talk to a lot of Sonlight graduates, and they go to church, they talk about Christ in their life with their parents, and then they get to college and it's a different atmosphere, depending on where they go, or they get out into a job with people who don't have that faith. And so we want to equip them now and have those conversations now so that they know what they believe and they can honestly talk about it with people and share that with others. So these are really good ones that I think we're really equipping our children for their future.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I love how you were talking about the earlier years were equipping the parents to answer the questions, right? I know young children oftentimes ask deep spiritual questions that maybe are harder for us as the parents to answer. So I love that we're starting out in those earlier levels, equipping the parents to answer those questions. And then as our children get older, we're equipping them, like you said, to defend their faith once they are out on their own. I think that is extremely important. And so I love how it's kind of progressively changing, from parent to student. At almost every level, it feels like we're adding in some new books like that. So so we definitely want to check that out. And even if you're maybe looking at updating your program for a younger student or something like that, there's a lot of great resources. So that is great. Thank you for showing us all of those. Let's talk now about level 100. This is our high school American history program, and this one's getting a spine change. Before we dive into that change, for those maybe that are newer to Sonlight or don't understand how our history programs are put together, what do we mean by the spine? And why are we changing what it used to be? It used to be something else. So can you tell us about that?
Right. Yeah, in our level 100, we had a history of us that we used as the spine. It was a series of books that we used, and it went through the various time periods of the history of the US. So it was very readable. It was very beautiful, and it really worked well. But we always update and we always look for the best of the best. So we want to make sure that our curriculum is relevant and current and using the best materials that we can. And so we've looked for a new book for a while, and we finally found one. The Spine is the one book or the series of books that goes throughout the year. And so generally it goes on a time period or shows you the time period, and then we kind of break off and read different books to match each time period. But it's the one book that goes throughout the whole year. So replacing the spine is a large revamp of everything. If we're changing every week, if we're changing all the reading assignments, it really changes the program and gives you a different feel. So changing the spine is big. And this year, so we're replacing Joy Hakim's A History of Us, and we're using this new book. It's called America, The Last Best Hope. It is by William Bennett. This book is actually, he originally wrote this book in 2 volumes. There's 2 volumes out there, and we have chosen to use the 1 volume edition. So it's a bit more approachable. It's a little bit more condensed than that, but he writes in such a great conversational tone, and he really does approach a lot of the controversial topics in a way that he approaches them evenly and shares both sides quite a bit. And we really appreciate that. And that's a lot of what Sonlight does, is we like to look at time periods or situations and look at from a variety of different viewpoints so we can really understand what happened to people during that time period. I really appreciated this book when I started reading it, that he does touch on a lot of the people and phrases that you hear about early American history. Paul Revere, he talks about him, he adds in those people, Ben Franklin, like all of the characters that we know of, the important figures. He really does touch on all of those and shows their place in history. So it's going to be a really great book, I think, for our high schoolers.
Along with that, I assume the instructor's guide is changing because I'm actually doing level 100 with my oldest right now. And so I know there's a lot of notes to explain both sides of the issues and things like that off of History of Us. Are there also going to be updates to any of the historical literature that's included, or is it just this book and the notes that center around this book?
We are changing others too. So we went through and evaluated to make sure that all of the books were the best. So we are removing a couple, but we're adding some great historical fiction as well that we believe will be just, like I said, these are the books that really bring those time periods to life, that like give them flavor, let us understand the situations. We have The Lions of Little Rock. So this one is about integration in the Deep South and how that happened, and from the viewpoint of a little girl that was involved in it. So that one's going to be a great one for our students to read. We have Constance, the story of the early Plymouth. So what life was like in Plymouth and what it was like for a girl, even not just the main figures that we know. And we have The Many Reflections of Jane Deming. So I think this is in the Washington Territory. So the Wild West, and what did that look like when it was first being settled? So there's that. And then we also have Out of Left Field. This one is later in history, in the mid 1950s, about a girl playing baseball. This one is, I think, in the series of the Green Glass Sea, which is another one that we carry in our high school program. So this one's going to be just so enjoyable, I think. But we really have gone through the entire program. We've looked at each book. We're writing new notes. It'll just be so engaging and so fulfilling for students to learn about American history and all the different things that went into building our country. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, we haven't seen as many big changes to high school. I'm excited. I'm going to have to get the new program when my youngest is ready for it. So.
Exactly. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about poetry. This is something that I think has confused people because Sonlight does a really good job in our instructor's guides of giving you notes on how to teach everything, but our poetry in the past has had less of those notes in the instructor's guides or explanation about how to use it. And so this again is kind of another customer feedback change that we're making. But what are we going to do to poetry to update it?
Right. Well, our thought about poetry is we want students to be exposed to it. We want them to hear it and listen to the sound of it and just enjoy it. So that's kind of the reason that we didn't have as many notes. We didn't want people to be bogged down. We didn't want them to feel like it was drudgery. So we just want people to delight in it. I know a lot of people use poetry as their special time. They make it special. They may have a tea party and read their poetry at that point. But we really just still want people to delight in poetry and hear it and be exposed to it. So by adding these notes, please don't think that we want you to make it a large study, but we wanted to add some helps to some people. I know it's one of those things that people feel is sometimes not approachable, or they don't feel confident in how to talk about it, or they want some direction on where to go. And so that's what we're doing here. We're completing out our note in several levels. We're adding notes so that you just have a place to start. You don't have to use them. If you still just want to delight in the poems, that's wonderful. That's what we want. But if you want a place to start and to talk about the poetry and talk about what's there and start to analyze it and look at it in a different light, we're adding notes that will help you do that. We're adding information about maybe the author who wrote it, what the time period was about, kind of the situation they wrote it in. We're adding in notes about if there's vocabulary words or unfamiliar words. We're listing those so that you have that information if you want to look at it. We're adding terms that are generally used in poetry, like alliteration and personification and those kinds of things, so that you're familiar with that as you get it later in the years when you do analyze poetry in a more rigorous way. Pointing out the various forms of poetry, if it's a limerick, if it's a haiku, a sonnet, a narrative verse, a lyric poem, a ballad, like all of those things that poetry takes on different forms. And so we're just pointing those out and looking at it just so that you're aware of it as you go forward and know that if you're writing poetry, you can try this format, that kind of thing. We're pointing out if there's a rhyming scheme that happens with it. Often the rhyme is very interesting, or the pattern, or what is that word? When it has different stresses on the syllable.
That iambic pentameter?
Yeah, if it has a format like that. So we're pointing those things out. It's not meant to be anything that you're quizzing your kids on or stressing, or it's mostly in the early grades. We just want you to hear it and be exposed to it. We do have a program in high school that you look at. Sound and Sense is a great book to analyze poetry. And we do go through all of those things, and we do add those things to high school. But in the younger years, we really just want you to be exposed to it. We've also added in some notes if there is a spot or a controversial topic that we want to give you to help you think about it from a Christian perspective. Like, how do we respond to this? What do we really believe about how people are? Those kinds of things. So we're just adding in helps for people if they want them. So honestly, we still want you to love poetry, delight in it, just hear it and experience it. But this is to help you explore it a little bit more if you'd like to.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you make about any of our instructors' guide, that they're a guide for you and a reference. You mentioned vocabulary, and I know that has saved me many times when my child's like, what does that word mean? And now I don't have to look it up because it's right there in my instructor's guide. But not having people take it on as a big stressful, oh, I need to quiz my first grader on what form of poem this is or anything like that. But it really is for your reference if you want to teach those things, if you need more. But also, if you just want to read the poem and enjoy it, you can too. So I think that's a great point to make there, that we definitely don't want to stress anyone out or make them think they have to take on, a lot more. We're just, again, making it easier for them to explain those things if they'd like to. Let's talk now about science. Anybody that's been around Sonlight for the last few years knows that we've been updating our elementary science programs, and E is up next. So what changes are we making to Sonlight Science Level E?
Yeah, this year we are changing some of the books, and we're changing the experiments mostly. It's still, our science program still follows the same format. We still have a great group of literature that you read. You still do. I have brought a sample of the instructor's guide. I printed off one. So you still have your schedule to follow. We have notes for all of the books that you're reading. We also have those do-togethers. People can do the simple little activities to kind of explore the topic more, or just think about it more broadly. Here are the answer keys. We still have these colorful activity sheets that your child can do. It kind of shows if they're paying attention to the books and can answer questions. It really solidifies the concepts that they're reading about as well. So we have these just beautiful, colorful activity sheets that they can do. And we also still have the answer keys so that you have the answers and don't have to read everything if you don't want to. So our instructor's guide is still the same, just so useful for science, I think. But for Science E, some of our new books, we're using some old books. They've moved around a little bit. So I think people are familiar with listening to crickets. This is the story about Rachel Carlson. Each level does have a scientist that we study. And so you learn about somebody doing science. And so that's her for this year. We have this book about water. I believe that we've had it before in another level, and so we've added it to this level. This is talking this year, kind of our main concepts that you're learning about this year in Science E is physical science and particles, and then energy and ecosystems and earth and space. And so this is a part of the physical science where you learn about matter. You learn about water, you learn about the particles that are really small. You also learn about how water flows through the ecosystems. So this is a really great one to just tons of like beautiful pictures that your kids will just pore over, I think. Another one about Earth and space. We do the Usborne astronomy in space. This one talks about the planets and different facts about the different planets. Here's Neptune, those kinds of things. In our experiments, we'll talk about like gravitational forces in space. You'll talk about how stars have different brightnesses because they're different distances away from the Earth. And so you see the different brightnesses. They might be the same, but because one is far away and one is a bit closer, they have different brightnesses, those kinds of things. We talk about constellations. This shows the constellations. You'll be able to see those in the night sky, and we'll do experiments about how those change over the year, throughout the year. So you see different constellations at different times of the year. And so there's actually an experiment where you're working with the constellations and seeing how your perspective changes depending on the year. So just a lot of cool things there. And then there's an engineering design component as well. And so your student will do, this is how to be a good at science. And so this talks about the scientific principles and how you can go through an experiment and how you can know things are true. This talks about how you do science and those kinds of things. So in engineering design, we'll do activities of creating a prototype and then improving on it. Like, what kinds of things can you change so that it'll work better? And just that continual improvement process, iterations of things. And so you'll start with one kind of design and you'll have to improve on it. You'll also have to, in one of the experiments, you have a situation and you're faced with a problem, and then you have to create different prototypes to say which might work. And then you have constraints to put on that. So, okay, I don't have these kinds of materials available. What can I do with the ones that I do have available, and those kinds of things. So a lot of that is teaching you how to be a good scientist, how to look at the world around you and know what it's made of, and those kinds of things. Here's the 5th day book. If you get the 5-day program, how things work. So you get to look at the inside of things and like how they're built and how they're put together. Here's like a hoverboard or like a hover bike and how they put that together. Here's how light works and how it's built up of several different colors, how vibrations and those kinds of things. So there's some really great books in Science E that I'm excited to share with you, and all the new experiments that you get to do. The experiments, there's a supply kit that will come with most of the items you need to do the experiments. There might be a few household items you need to add, but the supply kit is a wonderful starting point so that you're not searching for everything at the hardware store and all of those places. So
yeah, I think the experiments, you bringing up the kit, the kit allows you to do the experiment. If you're not somebody that is going to go track everything down, I know in our house, if we had to track them all down, would be less likely to do the experiment. But I love what you said. The kit includes everything that, or most things that you're going to need that you don't already have. And then you mentioned too how the experiments tie into the literature. I think that's something that people don't always think about. Like, am I just doing random experiments, or is it what you're reading in the literature, is it foundational for what you're doing in the experiments? Can you talk a little bit more? How do we decide what experiments we're going to do, or how do we make sure that they do tie in with the literature piece?
We do try often to tie them into the literature. We want students to read about something and then to be able to explore it. You know, that's often how people learn, is reading about it, but also doing it. And so we try really hard to tie those into what the students are reading about. We also have a couple experiments that we just think students of that age need to explore. And so there might be a topic or two that don't tie directly to the reading, but they're just really good for that age range, or that the age level, to know and to explore, and just to build that really good foundation of knowing science, knowing the scientific principles, or just how to explore things. So we've built all of those into the experiment book. It becomes a cohesive program where you are learning and exploring things all on the same topic.
Science is one of those areas too that you can combine multiple kids really easily. For somebody maybe that's new, do they have to do like level A, B, C, D in order, or can they jump right in if their kids are in the right age range? Is it more critical or less critical with science than maybe like history, Bible, literature, that you go in order?
Yeah, I think it's less critical to go in order. I think each kid will experience will meet what you give them. And it's not necessary to have to build on certain concepts, not like math where you have to learn addition first before you learn multiplication, those kinds of things. But with scientific topics, it's really about exploring, having that mindset of we can learn these things and we can see what they are and play with it and experience it. So I think that students can jump in at any time, that you can combine multiple levels. I think that also helps kids if the younger ones hear the older ones thinking about it, or an older one has to explain it in a different way to a younger one. That just really solidifies those concepts. It really allows them to interact with what's going on and process it in a good way. So I think science is one of those that you really can combine kids. You can start at any point that feels good for you. You pick one in the age range of your children, and you can really just develop those positive attitudes towards science of discovery and learning and all of those things. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we have covered a ton of things. Hopefully it hasn't been too fast or anything for everyone watching. Is there anything else that we left out that you'd like to mention coming in 2023 for any area?
oh, we just have so many exciting things, and I am looking forward to hearing how people use it, how they experience it, and I just love the feedback that we get. And so let us know what you think about things. We love to hear that. So I'm looking forward to that, just what people have to say about it. I'm very excited.
Reach out anytime and let us know what you think, because as we've seen this year, that feedback has kind of been the catalyst for some of the changes that we're making on top of, new products and changing things out and continuing to use the very best of the best. So Rhonda, I appreciate you being here to talk to me about it. Those of you watching, let us know what you think and if we can help you out with your orders.
Thank you.